I watched her from across the room. Every gesture magnified in my mind. She laughed in a way that used to make Emi's heart skip a beat. The same laughter that had once pulled me into her orbit like gravity, soft and intoxicating. But tonight, it was different. The sparkle in her eyes wasn't for me. It was directed entirely at Ryan, my coworker. She leaned closer to him, her hand brushing his arm in a way that made her wedding ring glint like a silent insult. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with a quiet, cold fire. Every instinct in me screamed to move, to confront her, to demand respect. Yet I stayed still, calculating, watching the woman I had loved with my entire being flirt with another man in front of everyone. As though I didn't exist, was unbearable, but necessary. The room was alive with chatter, the casual music flowing like a current that carried my wife and him through it. Yet I felt the tension in the air twist around us. Friends laughed, glasses clinked, but I only had eyes for the subtle cues. The way her leg brushed his under the table, the almost imperceptible leaning in when he whispered something she found amusing. It wasn't just flirtation. It was intentional, bold, careless. My heart, a strange mixture of ache and exhilaration, remembered the nights we had spent wrapped around each other, hands entwined, kisses stolen in quiet hallways. And now the intimacy she once reserved for me, the warmth she once offered freely, was being performed for someone else. I let her go on for a few more minutes, savoring the suspense, letting her arrogance carry her closer to the line she should never have crossed. I could feel the heat of desire she once stirred in me, taunting me now, but it only sharpened my focus. When the moment came, and she rested her hand boldly on his shoulder, brushing her ring directly against his skin, I made my move. Not a shout, not a confrontation. Something far more devastating. I excused myself briefly and sent a single, carefully composed message. Not to her, not to him, but to someone from her past, someone she believed forgotten, someone who had been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. When I returned to the room, my presence had changed the atmosphere. I exuded calm confidence, the kind that unnerves anyone who has something to hide. She noticed instantly. Her laughter faltered. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed slightly. She glanced at me once, a flicker of worry crossing her carefully curated expression. I could see her calculating, thinking, wondering if she could salvage the night. But it was too late. The stage was set, the pieces were moving, and the moment of reckoning approached like a tidal wave she could not escape. Minutes later, the doorbell rang, sharp, loud. It pierced the room and froze everyone in their tracks. My wife's face drained of color. She stuttered, panic, replacing the confidence she had worn so elegantly moments ago. That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. She knew exactly who was on the other side. I didn't rush her. I let the fear build, watched her shift weight nervously, her hand grazing her necklace, a subconscious plea for comfort that would never come. When the door swung open, the room fell into stunned silence. The woman standing there was every bit the storm my wife had feared. Poised, calm, and armed with evidence. Photos, messages, receipts, a carefully documented record of the secret life my wife had tried so desperately to hide. My wife froze, mouth slightly open, realizing in an instant that all her lies, all her flirtations, all the games she had thought clever were exposed. The air was thick with tension, a perfect storm of humiliation, revelation, and inevitable consequence. I stepped forward, letting my gaze sweep across the room. Since my wife seemed so comfortable sharing intimate moments tonight, I thought it was fair for everyone to meet the person who's been sharing her attention when I wasn't looking. I said softly, my voice calm, but carrying the weight of absolute control. The room gasped. Every friend, every coworker, every guest froze. The woman who had once commanded power through charm and deception was now trapped in a spotlight she could not escape. She tried to speak, to justify, to explain herself, but the words stuck in her throat. I watched as her panic grew, her carefully crafted facade crumbling under the combined weight of exposure and guilt. And as she looked at me, pleading silently, I felt the pang of what had once been love, a bittersweet reminder of the intimacy we had shared. That ache, however, was tempered by the clarity of justice. She had crossed every line, and now she would experience the consequences fully. The other woman stepped forward calmly, displaying every piece of evidence with surgical precision, Photos of private messages, screenshots of secret meetings, timestamps of indiscretions. Every lie she had whispered to me, every deception she had performed in silence now burned brightly in the room like a warning flare. My wife sank into a chair, trembling, humiliated, her eyes darting between me and the evidence, realizing for the first time that she was powerless. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I simply looked at her with the same calm intensity that had carried me through years of betrayal. "You wanted attention, affection, and control," I said quietly. "Tonight, everyone sees exactly who you are, and you have no excuses left." Her knees buckled slightly and she pressed her hands to her face, sobs threatening to break through as the room absorbed the gravity of her exposure. Her friends and colleagues watched in silence, the atmosphere heavy with tension and disbelief. The woman who had laughed, flirted, and manipulated was now the embodiment of regret and shame. I could see the flash of memory in her eyes. The nights we had shared, the promises we had made colliding violently with the reality of her choices. The power she had wielded for years evaporated in moments, leaving nothing but raw, unfiltered consequence. Finally, I turned to leave, my presence no longer required to complete her humiliation. My wife sat frozen, surrounded by witnesses, drowning in her own mistakes. The last thing she saw before I stepped out was the calm smile I had preserved for her. The same smile that had watched over every lie, every betrayal, and had waited patiently for the perfect moment of reckoning. And in that moment, she understood fully. Love, trust, and intimacy were no longer hers to command. She had lost everything to the cold precision of truth.